Hello and welcome, guys. This here will be a little talk about matters of existence. A little philosophy session, so to speak. Today we're gonna talk about karma and the implications of karma on freedom and the human mind and the human being. Karma is a word that's used a lot. It originates in Eastern culture and I think has roots that ties it back to the Hindu religion. I'm not very familiar with the history of the term itself, but today we're going to talk about karma in a very specific kind of way. And first I'm gonna explain my understanding of the word karma, and how maybe it's a little bit different than how karma is usually put into context. Karma to me means a couple of things. There is an element of justice to it, and there is an element of collaboration, and there is an element of originality. And by originality I mean source from which things are created. So let's break down these different aspects, and we can start with the term originality. When I say originality, I mean that whatever comes to happen to a person, through a person, or with a person, that experience originates in them. Whatever a person is experiencing or has experienced, that experience was collaborated through the person or the person's soul or higher consciousness, in collaboration with other sources of consciousness. You could call them higher sources of consciousness, call them angels or guides or guardians or enlightened masters or stars. Many names. Alright, let's go through the other aspects of karma. So we have originality. Everything a person experiences originates within them as a desire for experience. And what was the other ones we named? Justice and I don't recall. Let's talk about justice. The implications of originality are perfect justice. Because if you are collaborating in everything you are experiencing, nothing unjust can happen to you. So how do we merge this idea, this premise, with the experience of injustice that is a very common theme for human beings? It's a good question, right? How can there be an experience of injustice when the truth is that ultimately there is perfect justice? Well, this experience comes from a limited understanding, right? If you look at a person or a being and limit them down to their current lifetime, what you see is a snapshot of all they have been that is condensed down to this present moment. And the present moment doesn't show everything that a being is. It shows a very small, very small aspect of who they are. But if a person was to be everything they are at once, there would be very little potential for growth, because the experience would be overwhelming and indifferentiable. That's why we experience very small snippets of ourselves, one at a time, throughout our life. Sometimes going in cycles, sometimes skipping into different environments completely, leaving us feeling alienated from ourselves, maybe confused, misplaced, lost. To feel lost is a very common experience for the human being. Without direction, maybe, or worried about the future. Scared of the unknown, or grieving some part of ourselves that we feel we have lost because it has faded out of our consciousness. Anyway, back to the idea of justice. So, from my understanding, the way we grow as human beings is in a great deal in relationship with each other. We are our own source of consciousness, our own location of consciousness, and that grants us an incredible gift, which is the gift of individuation, that can only happen in that separation from everything else. But at the same time, our gift of individuation comes at the price of ignorance, because in experiencing life from our unique perspective, we grow inconsiderate of everyone else's perspective, more or less. And as such, we will do things that will upset other people, that will hurt other people, that will be incomprehensible to other people. And on top of that, the pain of separation, the pain of lacking understanding and lacking the means of communication that create resonance with the world around us, so that there is harmony between the internal and external world, leads to a lot of suffering that then can drive us to create suffering ourselves, or to create suffering for other people through our own hands. And I see this as the consequence of a despair for connection. That's how I understand psychopathy in a broad sense, right? I don't know if you have seen the Dahmer documentary on Netflix about the Dahmer serial killer. It's a very, very dark and very gripping also show that is in essence a true story, right? And this guy Dahmer, he's a very confused being to begin with, unusually confused, right? Everyone has some confusion in regard to their own existence and their own purpose and their own place and all these things, but this Dahmer guy is on a whole different level of confusion in his inability to establish meaningful relationships with the world around him, especially in the form of relationships to other human beings. And in his young years, his dad shows him how to kill and dissect animals, and Dahmer finds some kind of sexual pleasure in this very intimate relationship with the dead animal, with the corpse of the animal. When he feels the insides of the animal, he has an experience of resonance that excites him, both mentally and also sexually, right? So he has this experience of connection with the world around him. So for a moment there is this, sense of meaningful connection that he is usually cut off from, and that leaves him feeling lonely and lost. And so his fascination for dissecting animals goes further when he kills a person. I don't know exactly, I don't recall why he kills this person, but I think he's upset. I think he invites some guy over, and when the guy wants to leave, the fear of separation becomes so strong that he has to keep him by any means, and then he kills him in the heat of the moment, and then he can't leave, right? So then he's able to maintain this connection that he feels with this guy, and so he starts killing more and more, and whenever he kills a person, he gets this rush of connection. So what are we talking about? Psychopathy, right? Psychopathy and the longing for relationship and connection with the world around us. Now we get into the more difficult part of this philosophy lesson or session, and that is the paradox of victimhood. Because all these people that Dahmer killed, right, they were his victims. They hadn't really done anything to, quote unquote, deserve what happened. And we do this thing, right, as human beings, and we have to do this thing within a society in order to maintain balance and harmony, is that we create abstractions of justice from our limited perspective. And that perspective will tell us that these people that were killed, they did not deserve to die. They hadn't done anything, they hadn't broken any law, or done anything unforgivable that would justify killing them. And that's a perfectly sane perspective to hold. But when it comes to spirituality and philosophy, we have to look beyond our limited perspective of justice. And we have to consider the universal principle of origination that we talked about earlier. And if we consider that perspective, then we have to consider the possibility that these people that were killed were orchestrating that experience on a higher level of consciousness, or at least had agreed to this experience being orchestrated or being participants within this experience of being and expansion. Now, why would a person agree to participate in such an experience? Such a cruel, such an inhumane experience. And that's a very tough existential question to come to terms with, right? Because to the ordinary mind, to the ordinary sane mind, it's inexplicable. Because the mind sees the world not through a lens of evolution and expansion and growth and love, primarily, but through the lens of pleasure and pain. And that's also a very important thing. If we didn't look at the world, or if our minds weren't primed to look at the world through the lens of pleasure and pain, we would not be able to navigate the world in a good way, in a functional way. But this inclination of our awareness to agree to pleasure and to reject pain, or to go towards pleasure and to reject pain, is an obstacle in our understanding of what love is, and to what our purpose, to discovering what our purpose is as human beings on a larger scale, is my preposition. I think the important thing to discuss here is the practicality of the philosophical and existential implications of a nuanced understanding of karmic principle, its relevance for liberating ourselves from shackles that weigh us down and restrict our freedom in a way that we cannot enjoy life. And we all have traumatic experiences that are stored within our minds, right? There's no single human being that has not experienced something at least moderately painful. And what happens oftentimes when we experience something painful, and when there are other people that are contributing in that experience around us, be it parents, be it lovers, be it authority figures within society, is that our natural response functions create imprints within our limbic system, right? And these imprints are imprints of rebellion. We experience pain. We relate this pain to the people involved in the situation which we experienced as painful. And then we attribute responsibility outside of ourselves for the experience we have had. And this binds us to the other people, right? This is where we get the term karmic relationship. A karmic relationship is a bond with another person based on our own perception and ingrained within us as an emotional memory and energetic focal point within our bodily system, in which we hold a very complex narrative of what has transpired and what the world is as a consequence of what we have experienced. So we are bound through our experience, not only in the sense that our freedom is decreased, but also our perception, how we experience other people around us that have nothing to do with our past, is heavily linked to these neurological imprints that we create automatically as a way of coping with that which transpires. So, and the more painful the experience we have had is, the stronger the judgment and the defense mechanism and the system of the mind to create a world of perception in which we can navigate in a way that feels safe and that keeps us away from harm is. And the stronger the objection of responsibility. As a rule of thumb, the more painful the experience, the stronger the objection to responsibility. And what does that word mean, responsibility? It's a very vague and very it's a word that's open to a lot of different nuances and interpretations. But what it means in this scenario, and the way I want to use this word, is as what's the word? As an acknowledgement of your own involvement in everything that transpires, and your fundamental agreeing to it. Because if we come from the premise that nothing can happen to us that we have not agreed to begin with, then our objection falls away. At least that is the goal. And this is the interface of healing, is to understand the premise of karma, of originality, of responsibility in relationship to all that transpires and all that you are involved with, all that you are engaged with or have been engaged with as a matter of experience. And to see the objection and to not negate the objection, because that's just a meta objection. You're objecting the objection. That just gets you twice as deep into hell. And in this process of seeing this, of seeing that objection and acceptance are the poles between which our human experience unfolds. Within the witnessing, within the becoming aware of these poles, there is an enlightenment that takes place. Because the instance within ourselves that is witnessing and is observing this polarity stands beyond it and is already whole in its acceptance of existence. There is no objection. If you want to be perfectly correct, there is no acceptance either. But it's hard to understand this unified state of consciousness. It's what we call isness. And it's what people go to satsangs and spiritual gurus to learn. I think it's rather pointless. Why do I say that? Why do I think it's pointless? I think it's pointless to try and understand something that can't be understood. And I think you should focus on living your life to the best of your capacity and being engaged and involved in your own existence. And I think there is a danger of becoming too detached from society, becoming too detached from yourself as a person, to becoming detached from all the elements of sanity that keep you in an harmonious communion with everyone else around you, in focusing down on what I would see as obsession as an obsession with truth and unity. Alright, if you become too obsessed with unity, you're stuck in duality. It's like you try and escape it and you just sink your feet deeper down into the dirt, man. Because the moment you become obsessed with unity, you're in the duality of unity and separation. But both those experiences exist within the domain of unity. And the more you play this game of perception with yourself, the more you come to a wholehearted acceptance of life. And the more reverence you grow for being. And this I would call love. The inexplicable, unmeasurable, overflowing, all-pervading love that we as human beings on this planet are privileged to have access to. I don't know how it looks elsewhere in the galaxy. Maybe love is all around, I don't know. But I sure as hell know it's possible on this planet. So if you're suicidal, are you sure you want to leave? Sure it's better elsewhere. I'm not keeping you here. Now we're talking about suicide, huh? Yeah. Well, I think the more you can acknowledge and accept your own desire to die, the more freedom and love you will experience. Because you see that inherent in your wish to die is a wish to live. That inherent to your wish to cease experiencing, there is a wish to experience something else. And the only limitation of your perception might be that you have not yet allowed yourself to wish for its occurrence. Or maybe you have wished for its occurrence and simultaneously pushed it away. That thing which you long for. I know I have done so. More times than I can count. And I still do it. Not so vigorously. But I still do it. I still long for things I won't allow to come true. But I've grown patient. I've grown patient with myself. And with life. It doesn't have to happen now. I'm fine. I can enjoy myself. I can sit here and I can talk about philosophy. And explore this identity of being a philosophy tutor, for this imaginary crowd. I don't need to have everything I long for. And fuck you if you try to push me to get there quicker than I want to get there. Jesus. That has happened to me quite a few times. Someone else wanting to push me along on the path of evolution. Emmanuel, it's time to get out there. Emmanuel, you're stuck. I think that's up to me, to my discernment, whether I'm stuck or not. Because if the lacking transformational processes of the figure that you have created within your mind of me is bothering you, like, what are you actually holding me accountable to? Isn't it just your own desire for evolution? Don't you see that you stand much more to gain in leaving me be? And here we come into a very, very interesting relational topic, which is the paradox of acceptance and chaos. Because chaos is a very instrumental tool in transformative processes. It's when we rattle, we're thrown out of our boxed in perception of the world. That's when we really get, the chance to rediscover things, or to find out new things about life, to expand our perception, to expand our emotional capacity, and even our physiological capacity. Sometimes life drives us to the brink of death because our systems are so overcharged with conflict and dissonance that there is nothing left for us to hold on to. And what I've found is that in those situations, there is a magnificent thing that can take place. And that's the birth of a little light. And that light is different than all other light that we may encounter within the world of perception. Because that's a light that's birthed from within. Like a little candle, suddenly lit by an unknown hand. And I call this light hope. And it's like a fundamental resource inherent to being. that we can access. And from that place we can draw everything we could possibly need. In the terms of spiritual food or emotional food. I don't think we should seek despair. And I don't think we should engage in insanity. That is, I don't think we should engage in activities that go against our fundamental physiological guidance system. I think it's completely unnecessary. Because chaos will find us anyway. Insanity will find us anyway. Conflict will find us anyway. No matter how decent we are. So we might as well try to be good. We might as well try to be sane. I will not condemn anyone who acts insanely. I will judge them the same way I judge myself. But that judgment is not a force of violence. It's not even a force of correction. Because there is no need for change. But at the same time, it's the authentic expression of my experience. And I have to live in congruency with that authentic expression of my judgment in order to be healthy, in order to stay healthy. In order to keep myself sane. I want to talk a little more about this interface of polarity between objection and acceptance that I think is essential to the life path of every human being that has suffered an unusual degree of trauma. Because if the objection is not acknowledged, the human vehicle cannot heal. And if the objection is taken too seriously, the human being cannot heal. And healing is a good goal to have. The problem with having the goal of healing is that you portray yourself as broken. When you should be portraying yourself as growing. The other problem with portraying yourself as broken is that you keep your own internal figuration in place. Through your own system of awareness. When what you need in order to heal is an overlay also of new information. This maybe gets a little abstract when we start talking about information. But the way the mind works, to my apprehension, is that it translates information into experience. That's the fundamental system of the mind. It's the translation of information into experience that becomes somatically apprehensible. And here the biggest obstacle is fear. Because fear will kind of create cuts in our perception. And in order to heal those cuts, we sometimes need to face the fear that was there when the cut occurred. But if we become too obsessed with revisiting our past, and if we become too obsessed with the prospect of healing, then we again slip into the objection of life. And of living as such. We put living on pause and we go to rehab. And sometimes in extreme cases that's what's necessary, right? If you've been in a terror attack or you suffered something unspeakable. But the healing is never finished outside of living. It's like emergency repair, right? You cut yourself off from the world around you so that you can get a clear view of what has happened. And as soon as you have that clear view, you need to come back if you want to heal. Because if there's no new information coming in through the experiences of everyday life, the old information is on repeat forever. You'll drive yourself insane. I've driven myself insane more times than I can count. Yeah. It's not fun. It's not fun driving yourself insane. Sure ain't. But I suppose there are some existential muscles that are trained even in that darkness. Anywho's, to wrap things up, polarity, objection, acceptance. The objection has to be experienced. The objection should not be taken as truth. It should be experienced within the context of the mind's system of coping with the world, with keeping you functional, with keeping you sane. And then there should be a pondering of the prospect of acceptance. The prospect of an acceptance of responsibility when a fundamental existential acceptance is already in place, not before that. I don't think that's healthy. Because if you accept responsibility before you've accepted what has transpired fundamentally, then you're just gonna shift the blame and the force and the bonds that you've placed outside yourself, and you're gonna find internal representations that you shackle yourself to, and you're just gonna hate yourself instead, and that's not good. So yeah, find acceptance, find self-ownership, and find joy. Find joy in the knowing that you are a facilitator in everything that you experience. And don't overestimate your control in that process, because the part that you are consciously aware of currently, that we talked about in the beginning, the very small part of you that you are consciously aware of, is not in control. There's a bigger you that is facilitating your life experience, and you have to establish a relationship, and you have to establish faith with this bigger self, and with all of the universe within which the bigger you has its place, and with which the bigger you is collaborating on the journey of evolution and expansion and the growing into love and light and wisdom and strength and courage. Yes. And you don't have to understand it. You just, maybe sometimes all it takes is the consideration of such a world as potentially possible. the thought that this premise that I am sharing with you here today might be true. Maybe that gives you hope. And isn't that worthwhile? There is an obsession in society with scientific truth. And the skepticism of all that cannot be scientifically proven is, to my understanding, rooted in a lack of faith. It's a lack of faith. Faith in what? Faith in life having a purpose. Our society is deeply nihilistic. At least within the domain of science. Because if faith was the baseline of everyone's experience, there would be no need to be overtly skeptic against all that cannot be scientifically proven. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, you have the hippies and the New Agers who overemphasize a lot of things that have no objectifiable reality. And that's not good either, right? Because then the world becomes so chaotic, there is nothing holding it together anymore. Everything is just, limbic circus, as I like to call it. That's when the limbic system is not in a state of order, it's in a state of constant chaos. Because there is no fundamental principle along which the personal experiences and the experiences of other people around you can be ordered. And so every single person's illusion is their own source of truth. And they exist in a web. A spiritual clusterfuck. The lawless land of illusion. God bless the Constitution that keeps us sane. And God bless each enforcer of the Constitution that is spiritually mature and puts kindness above tyranny. Amen. Thank you guys. If you listened to this whole thing, props to you. If you followed half the things I said, props to you. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe I'll be back. We'll see. Bye.